Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Cindy Braden, the SVP of EnsoData, and I want to thank you for joining us for today's webinar, the CCSH Sleep Coach. We're really thrilled to provide this topic as an educational opportunity for those of you in attendance. A couple of housekeeping things. We've had hundreds of people register, so we do have the lines muted upon entrance, but we are going to try to save time at the end for questions. So as Drew and Teresa are going along, if you want to type questions in that you might have, we will try to cover those at the end. I think it's really important to know their history and the background they have and why we are so lucky that they agreed to provide this for us. Teresa DeNike is founder of SleepBetterNYC, a company that provides education, coaching, and care coordination. As a national speaker and board certified sleep educator, she co-authored the AASM A-STEP program and a dental sleep medicine course for Ignite DDS. Teresa has over 14 years of experience in healthcare sales and consulting and an expertise in dental sleep medicine. She founded SBNYC as a solution for the countless patients, family members, and friends struggling through a typical pathway for sleep support. And Drew Copeland is the operations and IT lead at SBNYC. He has 18 years of experience in clinical sleep medicine, specializing in sleep apnea testing and treatment. Drew has served as a subject matter expert for the BRPT and AASM, is a published author on remote patient monitoring, and has been an invited speaker on topics like sleep testing, sleep and mental health, and the economics of sleep medicine. He's also the executive director of ProSleep, a company that provides effective sleep solutions for home sleep testing for large medical operations. So as you can see, we are thrilled to be able to lean into their experience and expertise. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Drew and Teresa.
Okay, perfect. So today we're going to cover these topics on the left to achieve the following learning objectives. We're going to be able to understand the need for clinical credentialing in a non-clinical setting. We're going to go over all CCSH pathways, but especially the pathways for those with an industry background and for non-RPSGT healthcare professionals. We will discuss efficient data capture and communicating with medical providers and tools for building a health coaching business without compromising clinical quality.
Good, everybody is voting too. So we'll give you guys a couple of seconds on answering what you think a sleep coach is, and then I can share the results so that everybody can see.
Perfect.
All right, here are the results. 5% believe someone who helps with sleep training for babies, 19% on monitoring CPAP compliance with sleep studies, 12% on sleep care coordination for appointments and testing, and 65% on sleep hygiene education.
Okay, so
those are really great results, actually.
Yeah. Awesome. We're back to your screen.
Awesome.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll get back to that poll later after we go through a few things. So we'll talk about what we think as sleep coaches.
Yeah. Real quick, we have worked for and with several companies in the sleep industry, but none have a direct influence on our presentation. So we do not have any conflicts of interest to disclose. Let's talk about sleep coaching. We got this great quote by Dr. Watson, AASM past president, saying coaches help people, they help set goals, they help them achieve those goals, and they provide encouragement along the way. The way that we like to explain sleep coaching is it's like a personal trainer for sleep. You know, when you want to get in better shape, you go to a personal trainer. And when you want to get in better sleep, you go to a sleep coach. So if you, let's say you are trying to improve your fitness, you can go to the internet and look for videos and articles, but it's a jungle out there. So instead, you can go to a personal trainer and they will help you narrow it down, filter out the BS, and they'll help you hold you accountable to meet your goals. That's exactly what we're looking to do, but just with sleep. All right, we will assess your current state, set those goals, identify any barriers, and give you tools to overcome them. Now, in the same way that a personal trainer, if something is over their head, if someone really has a musculoskeletal condition and they need to go to see a physical therapist or orthopedist, they'll send them. And same thing with us. If we identify someone that we believe has a sleep disorder, we will make sure that they're sent to a sleep physician. One more quick note about sleep coaching. It's not a regulated profession or service. And unfortunately, it has got a bad rap over the years when well-intentioned but non-clinical specialists get involved, especially when they, maybe read a self-help book or a blog and then just decide that they're going to go coach and they don't have any protocols or networks. And so that is why we think the CCSH credentialing is so important. It gives you a baseline, it standardizes the knowledge and the scope of practice for the sleep coach. So I'm going to hand this over to Teresa.
Sure. So Cindy was so gracious in our introduction to us, but obviously you guys know now I'm Teresa, the founder of SleepBetterNYC. My company provides sleep coaching and online education for consumers and clients independent of any medical treatment, but we also do work with patients of sleep clinicians. So with these patients, we help care coordination and monitoring of their sleep treatment. You might notice that I have my bachelor's degree and CCSH, but I'm not a sleep technologist. I've spent about 13 years in medical and dental sales and consulting, and I never ever found something so relevant to every person and yet so mysterious to the average person until I got into sleep. So my experience in sleep started in the dental sleep medicine world, and I saw this incredible need for patient education and support that they just were really missing. It's a very fragmented field, as we all know, and as an entrepreneur, of course, I saw this as a business opportunity. So Drew gave a quick overview of coaching and the need for qualified providers, but let's get into that a little bit more. It's probably no surprise to anybody in this webinar that there are millions of patients with sleep disorders who are undiagnosed and untreated. The image on the right here is from a Frost and Sullivan report from 2017. It shows over 29 million people with mild, moderate, and severe OSA, which is roughly the population size of Texas. We know that only about 20% of these people are actually diagnosed, and they are prescribed the therapies listed below. But unfortunately, many of them might not adhere to prescribed therapy immediately or in the long run, and without monitoring, it's really difficult to keep track of that. Patients rarely know all the options, and they definitely don't know the process. So there seems to be a lack of accurate and up-to-date information for patients, and there's also a lack of time to get them this information in the clinical setting, thanks in part to the structure of our healthcare system. A recent analysis of American Google searches showed that sleep apnea was searched over 17 million times annually. Many of those people go on to be targeted for countless ads and gimmicks and unqualified social media gurus, and there's just so much noise out there when it comes to sleep. Of course, everybody also has questions about the recall, materials, devices, exchanges, back orders. There is a lack of available information about alternative therapies as well. Oral appliance therapy, for example. I have heard time and time again that patients they didn't even know that oral appliances are covered by medical insurance, or they might have a CPAP that was in their closet for 5 years and they just didn't know there were other options out there. At times, I've also mentioned this example of a patient who gets screened and tested and diagnosed, and they're on appropriate therapy, only to find out that they also have mental health issues that were not addressed, and they drink espresso every night at dinner. So this is really where the coach comes in. Now, this patient education about sleep hygiene and mental health and basic Q&A about treatment, this information is relatively easy to explain to patients, but the real issue is the time burden in the clinical setting. So who has the time and who is helping all of these patients? So we see 29 million people here on the left, and then a teeny tiny sliver here broken out into another chart on the right. Shows that there are about 24,000 members of the AASM. There are a little less than 8,000 physicians across the country that are board certified in sleep, and the AADSM only has about 5,000 members. And for many of them, dental sleep medicine is only a small portion of their practice. So between the lack of practitioners and the lack of information about various effective treatment options, people will probably continue to turn to Google and random people on the internet for help. So unfortunately, it's very obvious there are just far too few practitioners. We can't magically create thousands more physicians, psychologists, and dentists who focus on sleep. Sleep coaches who are credentialed, CCSHs, allow these already overburdened providers to operate at the top of their license while getting more patients through the process to successful treatment and even through effective therapy monitoring. Now, there are 3 pathways to CCSH credentialing. The most common, and for good reason, is the active RPSGT. They have a significant amount of patient contact with experience with sleep data analysis and physician reporting. Healthcare professionals, if you have the credentials in this middle box, you can actually study and sit for the exam now. Now, it is not an easy exam, so I would strongly encourage several months, if not longer, of studying and prep, but you are eligible. And if you're interested, there's actually a prep course coming up in the next month. So just reach out to me after this webinar and I will send you that information. Now, perhaps the least likely, but the path that I took was with clinical experience. As a non-licensed professional with a bachelor's degree, I participated in over 1,000 clinical hours that varied in clinical and patient education, management, and sleep care coordination. I also got certified with basic life support and CPR training. It is pretty easy now to find a way to do this basic life support and CPR training online or in person, which of course the CPR testing being in person. So getting into the non-traditional pathways to CCSH, clinical experience, or my story is, as I mentioned, I have many years of industry experience. This gave me this really strong passion and drive to just do more to help people. When I first got into sleep, I was working for a manufacturer and the market leader for research in oral appliance therapy. So I was able to provide education on the basics of OSA and oral appliance therapy to many clinical teams, but that was just the start. So my work in the past was directly related or directly with clinicians, but I really had minimal patient contact. So I connected with sleep labs, physicians, and dentists for that experience to shadow them and to participate in that patient communication and care coordination with the patient's consent, of course. It's super important. So anybody watching, I want you to think of where you are now. What is your expertise? What is your experience? Can you share that with other professionals? When you get the materials and prepare for this exam, recognize what you need to learn and who can help you get there. Other licensed healthcare professionals, listen up. If you have a general understanding of sleep and healthcare, if you're passionate about educating and supporting people, this is for you. And I swear nobody paid me to say that. I just really believe in it. Being eligible for this exam, you can get the materials you need and start studying on your own right now. Then you can go ahead and reach out and ask to shadow that sleep dentist and or physician and or sleep tech so you have a well-rounded understanding of patient care and other perspectives and other sleep disorders. Now we do focus pretty heavily on OSA, but the CCSH must be knowledgeable on all sleep disorders, signs, symptoms, treatments, and pharmacology. Now, personally, I think that dental hygienists in the dental sleep practices are perfect for the CCSH credential, and I strongly encourage it. We know that in many practices, the hygienist is the one who is talking with the patient, going through these questionnaires. The patients might be a little more comfortable sharing information with them, and they might be willing to have more open conversations with them. We actually know of a really successful dental team out in Chicago. They have a lot of locations and they're all planning to go get their CCSH. So they all have this robust education and standardized knowledge across the practices. Now, if your practice or clinic doesn't have the personnel for this, you could always outsource to a group like mine. This slide has a few images that I borrowed from Somnomed. They are not a sponsor, I just like the poster. I won't go into the incredible amount of statistics and comorbidities related to untreated OSA. I think everybody on this webinar should know the direct impact of untreated OSA on heart attack and stroke, as well as the improvements and basically all aspects of health when properly treated for OSA. All sleep disorders impact mental health and mood disorders impact sleep. There is no question about that in the research, and it is really important to coordinate care for patients who need that extra support. Now we're considering outcomes, both risk and improvements in health are dose dependent. If we look at this kind of small graph on the bottom right here, the red line is people who are untreated with OSA, and the blue and black lines towards the top show patients treated with oral appliance therapy and CPAP. Now, both groups are significantly more likely to survive when they are adherent to therapy. So this obviously shows a dose dependency, but there can also be a coach dependency. Qualified coaches can ensure that treatment is accepted when the patient is first diagnosed. We can help to explain these risks and comorbidities. We can also guide them through the process and monitor their therapy over time to ensure that they are compliant and measure their outcomes. So improved outcomes are obviously important, and they must be proven both subjectively and objectively, especially if your client is going to bring that information to a physician at some point, or if you are working with the patient of a provider who must submit certain reports for insurance purposes. You really need to be able to understand these standard clinical practices so that you can balance the needs of the patient or client and the needs of the provider while running your business. CMS has approved physician quality reporting systems, PQRS measures for OSA safety, and I've listed out a few outcomes that you should want to measure and document here on the left. Now, when helping someone with their sleep issues or their sleep disorder, we really need to start at the reason and the symptoms that led them to you. What would have to be improved to show that treatment is successful? In OSA, of course, we tend to go by the objective measure of AHI. Despite its limitations, it's really necessary to understand it and explain to your client or patient so you can motivate them for therapy adherence. However, patients may or may not care about that number, but they will remember if they are less sleepy, if you got them sleeping in bed with their partner again, or if they're able to be more present with their family. We have to understand these subjective symptoms and quality of life to be able to support and coach them through improvements. And of course, happy patients or clients who are treated successfully with good sleep hygiene, they tell their friends and they also report to their doctors. So by improving patient satisfaction, the provider may refer more patients to you to become clients. And we'll talk a little bit more about the business aspect in the second half of this, but this is really what sets us apart from random people on the internet who call themselves sleep coaches. We understand these clinical guidelines and we work with providers while performing this subclinical work. Which leads us to the halfway point of this presentation, and I can finally stop talking and hand it over to Drew. A sleep coach can get all this information about sleep disorders, treatment, and progress, and translate it to the patient or the client and record their changes over time. So in collaboration with medical professionals, we show a truly comprehensive care model in an otherwise very fragmented field. As credentialed coaches, we have a strict scope of practice. Of course, we don't ever diagnose or treat medical or psychiatric conditions. We do often work with clients who are not patients at all. They haven't been diagnosed with any sleep or psychiatric disorder. For those people, sleep hygiene and support is about helping them to optimize their health, to feel better, and to see progress in those subjective outcomes that we talked about. And of course, as a trained healthcare professional, we can recognize red flags and refer them out for proper testing and treatment when necessary. Overall, we know that education and support and accountability empowers people to take control of their health. We know this because of years of big data from consumer wearables, as well as patient-facing platforms that have shown to increase adherence to CPAP therapy, as well as therapy for remote patient monitoring and management of other chronic conditions. So coaching with a human provides concierge-like service to ensure engagement and follow through where those apps and consumer devices really fall short. So I'll now hand the mic over to Drew to talk a little bit more about his experience in the logistical aspects of sleep coaching.
Thank you. That was a lot. Yeah. Okay, you can take a break now. Hi, everyone. I'm Drew. First and foremost, I want to unequivocally state that I'm a dedicated healthcare professional. I've been working in sleep medicine for 20 years. My parents are CPAP users. I've seen the life-changing impact that quality clinical care can have on patients' lives. I've also seen patients wait 6 months to see an overworked sleep doctor. That's just the reality. I've seen patients' jaw hit the floor when they saw the cost of their hospital sleep study. And I've seen patients struggle to contact their understaffed DME company or their sleep dentist who only works 2 days out of the month. Teresa, please don't kill me for saying this, but I wish that our business model wasn't necessary. Really, I wish that everyone had access to the care that they need to optimize their sleep health, but they just simply don't. And since I have not yet fallen into a couple $1 billion yet. The best I've been able to come up with is to at least ensure that patients get everything I can provide them in return for their investment in their own health. So let's talk about some of the practical aspects of transitioning from your typical clinical setting, which is where I'm from, to a direct-to-consumer coach. First of all, this is the fun part. You're the boss. You're the expert. You get to decide what to ask, how to respond, and what to write down. You want to talk to the patient for an hour about how important light exposure, temperature, and their bedroom environment is? Yeah, go for it. You want to have a video coaching session with them at 8:30 at night after your kids are in bed? Yeah, do it. You want to advertise that you're only available every other Tuesday and Thursday between 4 and 6 and tell them that your fee is comparable to what they're paying for their personal trainer? Why not? Your job is to meet the patient where they are. Now, are there best practices you should follow? Absolutely. But the point is that you're not necessarily forced to meet some arbitrary standards set forth by the insurance company. We're going to talk about handling PHI. We're going to start with PHI because, you know, there's like laws and stuff attached to that. Remember when you first moved out of your house and you had to figure out how to budget your money and pay your bills and manage things like leases and retirement and taxes? Well, you've now left the nest again. You no longer have your healthcare parent providing everything you need to survive. But just like early childhood, you can learn how to do this too. So first, you need to decide if you are actually handling protected health information. If you're a CCSH or a licensed professional, you really should do that, since that's going to give you the information you need to really help your client. HIPAA covered entities are clearly defined in the regulation as any health plan, healthcare clearinghouse, or healthcare provider who transmits any PHI. However, a healthcare provider is generally considered to be someone who provides medical services or services in conjunction with medical services. Neither Medicare or the Department of Justice have definitively ruled on whether a health coach is a designated healthcare provider for the purposes of HIPAA. However, we are here to advocate collaboration between sleep coaches and medical teams, which means you absolutely will be handling PHI. So here's a crash course to hopefully keep you out of jail. Quick disclaimer, I am not an attorney and nothing I say should be constituted as legal advice. Okay, I'm gonna kind of rush to this next one and you'll see why in a second. First of all, you have to talk about transmitting PHI, which means you're gonna either e-fax, and I cannot believe we're saying fax in 2022, or you have to use encrypted email. Both of those can happen. You usually have to pay for the e-fax service, or you have to go through some work to implement the encrypted email. Most places don't have that out of the box. Then you don't just send and receive PHI, you will probably be storing it. I advise against storing the data on your hard drive. You should use secure cloud storage. Most of the paid cloud storage services like OneDrive or Google Drive or Box or Dropbox can be made HIPAA compliant. However, if you are going to store PHI, you should have a BAA, that's a business associate agreement, in place between you and the healthcare provider and you and the cloud storage provider. If you just Google BAA template, you can find one online. And finally, you're going to be communicating with a patient, and that might require a BAA between you and the video conferencing service. All the big names, Zoom, Teams, WebEx, GoToMeeting, they also offer HIPAA compliant solutions that have a higher encryption. Or you could forget a lot of what I just said and find an online EHR that incorporates most, if not all, of those features into one. You know, a quick Google search for online HIPAA compliant coaching platforms gave me 18 options. I highly recommend going this way, especially if you can find a platform that includes features like marketing campaigns or online scheduling or invoicing or payment collection. We use one now that's great, and if you message me later, I can give you some recommendations. So fly, bird, fly. All right, we're gonna talk about building your referral network as a sleep coach. Now, this isn't a webinar about how to build a business. We're doing it, but it's not our expertise or the goal of this webinar. To get some of it out of the way, if you want to do this, you have to go through a planning stage where you devise a strategy, you secure funding, you submit the paperwork for licensing and all that. You then have to build your business. You have to create your content and set up your EHR and your email, your bank account, all that. And then there's a lot of ongoing business aspects like contracts and bookkeeping. But what I want to focus on is building your referral network. And to do that, you do something called marketing, which is not a word most of us in the clinical setting are used to using. But as a sleep coach, you need to eventually get some business. So let's start with word of mouth. if you just want to dabble, or if you're just getting started, you should be telling your family to spread the word for you. You know, people are asking you for sleep advice all the time anyway, so those are the perfect people to start with. So here's a pro tip: create a website and share the link or the QR code with your friends and family, so they can give that potential client, they can get them directly to your words instead of having them try to sell it for you. You're like, well, my grandson sleeps with people for money or something. You want to have your message get out there. Once you maybe coach a few of your friends, then you can graduate to social media. Now, what you can do with social media is you can find people who are willing to pay out of pocket for this. You can promote your services on Instagram or Facebook Lives. You can have podcast appearances, and eventually, you might even get invited to appear on, say, a EnsoData webinar. Social media can definitely help you get the word out, but I will warn you, it is a lot of work to maintain, which is why Teresa handles all of that. And finally, once you kind of have your feet on the ground, the next step is to go the B2B or the business to business route. Great place to start is with the sleep physicians or dentists that you already know. They speak your language, they understand what these patients need. They might need some convincing. You're asking them to change their established process, so you really need to be able to show them the value in this. And then the next step would be to reach out to PCPs or non-sleep specialists. Most of them are looking for an easy button for their patients. However, they might need some support for the more complex sleep patients, so that's where you can help those patients get to see your sleep physician colleagues. You can then graduate to medical groups, much higher volume, but much more red tape to get involved there. And finally, kind of an out-of-the-box solution is to reach out to employers with employee wellness programs. I would recommend you go in there with a polished product if you're going to do that. So wait until you've coached or until you've done some speaking to go that route. So what we want to talk about now is, this was a big change for me, and we've even during this webinar right now, is calling them clients instead of patients. So Charlie Parker, and no, that's not a HIPAA violation. Charlie Parker was a 1940s jazz saxophone virtuoso. He had this amazing quote. He said, "First you learn the instrument, then you learn the music, and then you forget all that and just play." So obviously I'm telling you, if you aren't playing alto sax for your coaching clients, you're doing it wrong. Not really, that wasn't funny. All right, what I'm telling you is that if you're someone who spent years working in sleep, you have a wealth of knowledge to share. Now, do you probably have gaps in your knowledge? Yeah, I'm still learning things from conferences, podcasts, and webinars, but I am going to them, and so should you. So your job as a sleep coach is different than the highly qualified medical team who will be making the evidence-based clinical decisions. And by the way, if your client doesn't have one, you can connect them to one that you trust. Now, you see, these are your clients. They are expecting you to coach them. And here's what that means. So as a coach, the first thing we do is we determine goals. Why do they want to improve their sleep? Is it they want to be more productive at work so they can meet their financial goals? Do they want to improve their mental health so they're a better spouse or parent or friend? Or do they want to have more energy so they can play with their grandkids? Once you know what their goals are, you can assess their current state. So do they need to be evaluated for a sleep disorder? Or maybe they've failed therapy in the past. Or maybe their sleep hygiene is, through ignorance, just a total dumpster fire. Once you know what their current state is, you can identify the barriers and or the gaps in their knowledge. Maybe they're avoiding going to see a doctor because I don't want to wear that mask thing, or maybe they have a double espresso every night because caffeine doesn't affect them, or they actually think that counting sheep at 2 a.m. will help them fall back to sleep. Once you know where the gaps are, you can then provide quality, digestible education and tools, and that looks different for every patient, every client. See, I'm still doing that right now. Some clients will want to talk to you, will want to talk through all of this on a weekly basis, like you're their sleep therapist or counselor. Some will binge watch all the educational videos you give them and read through all the content because they want to understand the underlying mechanisms of their poor sleep. And some just want a checklist with what to do, how to do it, and when it should be done. Once your next step is to make strategic interventions. And what I mean by strategic is this: you want to make one change at a time. You want to give that change time to have an effect. And you want to understand and communicate with your client that sleep improvements tend to come by stacking compounding actions on top of each other. And finally, as you're making those interventions, you want to monitor their progress. Maybe that's weekly, maybe it's every other week, maybe it's monthly sessions to discuss this. You can use subjective tools like sleep diaries or an Epworth or FOSC. By the way, if you're going to use the Epworth or the FOSC, do get a license. They are free tools to use, but you do need to request a license. Just Google that. Or you can use objective measures to monitor like consumer wearables, and we're going to talk about that in the next section. But basically, that is the playbook for a sleep coach. And if all else fails, you do all this and you're not seeing, you're handing them back to the sleep provider, having ruled out something underlying cause for their poor sleep. So we're going to talk to kind of the last topic here for me, and it's remote monitoring using medical devices and consumer wearables. I grew up working at summer camps, and we had a phrase on how to deal with the more enthusiastic campers, and the phrase was, be a channel, not a dam. And the truth of the matter is that consumer wearables are here. They aren't going anywhere, and we might as well embrace them. Now, I know all the arguments against them. I've heard that the sensors aren't accurate enough. That's true in some cases, but they get better every year. I've heard that the signal processing that they do is a black box and we can't see it. That's true in many cases, but that's changing too. The Oura Ring just released a statement expressing a desire to collaborate with academic researchers. I've also heard that the manufacturers for these rings change their algorithms too often. One could make the argument that we don't change ours enough. I mean, we are still using AHI. Oh, sorry. And then I've also heard that these will negatively impact sleep because people will obsess over their metrics. I'd venture the completely unresearched opinion that the same people who obsess about their sleep data are probably the ones who would obsess about their lack of sleep data. And the final thing I've heard is that this is just another attempt by big tech to monetize healthcare. And the answer is, yeah, sure, maybe, probably. But the gap between industry and academia is closing every year. I'm not going to name names, but there are a lot of brilliant, respected scientists who have gone over to the dark side because they'd rather be part of the solution. We could have a very lively debate about this. And if you want to, we can meet at the bar during the sleep meeting in June. But it really just comes down to this. The genie is out of the bottle. The market for wearable sleep trackers is projected to reach $4.2 billion by 2026. And manufacturers aren't just going to stop making them because we wagged our finger at them. So what do? If you're in the clinical setting and you're able to bill insurance, you have a lot of choices for medical devices that can get you validated sleep data, and you should absolutely use those. But I'm telling you that as a sleep coach, many of our clients already have a consumer sleep tracker, and these can have some great uses. So first, I'll tell you that they can provide an engaging opportunity for education. So try going through all the numbers their device spits out and use it as a teaching tool to educate them on sleep. If you get them excited about their sleep, their own health. They can also give you a wealth of historical sleep data that you can probably trust, like sleep timing, sleep efficiency, heart rate variability. A quick sidebar, a lot of people rail against the accuracy of sleep staging in these. I would encourage you to read some of the recent research. Some of them compare pretty darn well to PSG, or they're at least good enough. And finally, consumer trackers can help you monitor your sleep hygiene interventions. As long as you take a macro view and you don't overvalue the data or overtrust it, these devices can provide objective feedback not only for you, but for your client, which can help motivate them to continue making positive changes. One of my favorite scenes from The Office is when Michael Scott just drove into a body of water because that's what the GPS was telling him to do. He overtrusted the device and stopped trusting himself. And the moral of that story is that wearables are just a tool, and any tool used incorrectly is going to be ineffective. So we're going to go back to this poll that we asked at the beginning and revise some of the answers. So first, a sleep coach is someone who helps with sleep training for babies
and or their parents and or any human at any stage of life who needs education and support. Second, a sleep coach is someone who monitors CPAP compliance and helps with supplies,
as well as someone who monitors any prescribed sleep therapy like oral appliance therapy, CBTI, or medication. Third, a sleep coach is a sleep care coordinator for appointments and testing,
who helps to collect, analyze, and share data with providers advocating for patients along the way. And finally, a sleep coach is a sleep hygiene educator
who proactively communicates with that patient to help them set and achieve goals. So that's us. That's what we wanted to talk to you about. We have our contact information up there. I hope this has been helpful to some of you, and I hope we gave you some new information or maybe inspired a couple of you to dive into sleep coaching.
Yeah, reach out. You can find us on LinkedIn by searching our names. Those are obviously our direct email addresses, and then the QR code on your screen is actually for our Instagram.
So we'd love to invite the Enso folks back in, and we can love to answer some questions if there are any from the attendees.
I don't think we see the chat, but yeah, let us know if there are questions or chats that we're not seeing.
We had one question pop in, and I did recreate the poll because it made me nuts that Google gave me trouble earlier, and I'm more of a pro than that. So I'm going to launch the poll. If anybody does have questions, go ahead and get them typed in. So I am still curious just to see, as we do these educational things, who comes to join us. So what is your role in the sleep practice? So let's go ahead and get that. Oh, you guys are all over it. We're all pros now. So we've already got half of the people voting. You can select more than one here. So it might add up people. I always laugh when we do this because then people go, it's more than 100% because typically most people 100%. So we'll have a lot. All right, you guys, we're already at 80%. So I'm going to give a 3-second and then I'll share the results on that. And then don't forget, if you do have any questions, go ahead and get those typed in. We do have some time to ask them of Drew and Teresa. Okay, so here's the results. 84% RPSGT, 35% CCSH, 4% physician or dentist, and 16% other.
Oh, wow, that's a great mix.
Yeah,
awesome. So, okay, so we did get one. Oh, we've got a bunch in now. The first one we got, and I'm going to apologize because I'm not sure, this is not my field of expertise if I'm understanding the question. So I'm going to read it as is, and I know people type them in fast, so hopefully it makes sense to you guys. Asking about ventilation mode, which is suitable for PSG usage and setups.
Yeah, that is absolutely outside of the scope of what we're trying to do here. I mean, if there are ventilation modes that need to be adjusted, that should be done along with the sleep physician. Yeah, that's I love the question. It's important, but that should be done in a clinical setting.
Different setting. Perfect.
Yeah.
Then maybe it wasn't as confusing to me as I thought. And then I just wanted to give you guys a shout out from somebody who said they absolutely love the Office reference that you did. I know because I give these a lot. It's good to get that back live. Is there an insurance code for a CCSH session?
This is a great question. Do you want to start it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, basically, I mean, we do everything out of pocket for now. By the time somebody sees a coach, they've pretty much already decided that they do want to make a change. So typically those people are a little bit more willing to spend money, just as somebody who really is passionate about losing weight or gaining muscle is willing to pay for a personal trainer. Now, we are working with more patients of physicians lately and getting more into that field where there are different billing codes, potentially patient education codes or remote patient monitoring codes.
Yeah.
Which is really Drew's expertise here.
My soapbox here is the best way to go about that, and I think that the place that's most impactful on the patient is with these remote patient monitoring codes. That will allow a credentialed CCSH to work as clinical staff under the general supervision of a physician, make those timely interventions, whether it's mask changes or pressure changes, with a physician's order, or maybe even therapy changes, which I don't think we do enough. And all of that time that you spend is billable. And if you want to under supervision, yes. Yeah. And if you want to know more about that, I actually did give a talk on that at the Philadelphia Sleep Conference a couple months back. I think that will be available for everyone. So remote patient monitoring, I think, is definitely a big wave of the future. Yeah.
Fantastic. Next question, people thinking practically, are there any specific software tools that you are using or seeing to assist a CCSH sleep coach?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely tried a lot because we're winging it.
Yes.
And because of Drew.
Because I have ADHD, but yes.
Which would we, I mean, of course, well, not of course, but we do recommend doing a website. A lot of the websites now do come with some marketing materials, like being able to collect names for an email list and doing marketing in that way. The EHR is something that is really, really important. We've tried a few. Do you want to talk about the one we use?
Yeah, well, I think the thing I want to highlight is one of the things we've gone into is providing self-paced education. The EHR we're currently using allows you to do that. So if a patient needs or client needs a bunch of information on sleep hygiene, they can walk through. We recorded a bunch of videos where we're actually us with our own voices explaining these things to them, but it means that we can give this to them without physically having to be there every time. So I think finding something like that would be really helpful. As she said, and as we mentioned during the webinar, and EHR is really really essential. Many of them have so many features to help you communicate with both clients and with providers. They help keep you out of jail by having the security built into them. Maybe the kind of small thing I would mention in this is get a lawyer.
Yeah.
Well, we got a lawyer. We wanted to make sure that we're covered as far as liability, that the clients know we're not giving them medical advice, and they can't say that we tried to give them medical advice. So that's something I would recommend.
Yeah, if you want some specifics, again, we've tried a lot, but I would probably want to stay away from like mentioning any names and getting people confused. But if you want to get a few links or recommendations, just send us an email and we'll let you know what we have tried.
Perfect. The next question is, have any of your clients asked you about Inspire? I see those TV commercials all the time, so I'm guessing they do.
Yeah, that's a great question. They do have great marketing. I mean, I think it really helps the sleep field in general, just getting people like asking those questions. We've definitely had people, and also, considering Inspire is a major surgery, it's really interesting when you realize that people have no idea what the other options are. So like, for example, we had a guy in, I think, Ohio. He was actually a really great patient. He really, really tried hard to use the CPAP, but I don't remember why. For some reason, it just wasn't working out for him. And he was just like, I think I'm going to get surgery. So he had no idea any of the in-between stuff. He didn't know how to contact his DME. He didn't know about oral appliances or positional or anything else. He just immediately thought, okay, I guess that's the only option because it's on TV. But I mean, yeah, people ask pretty frequently because of their marketing.
And we feel comfortable providing education. All right, that is absolutely that we can provide them education. However, once clinical decisions have to be made, and I'm going to harp on this probably every single time, that's when they have to speak to a physician. All right, really what we're trying to do is to decant the physician so they don't have to start from scratch. If we can give all the information and then they go in a little bit more informed, then they can have an easier conversation with the physician.
Right, so if somebody asked us, obviously we're not going to say, yes, you should do it or you should not do it, but we'll tell them exactly what it is. We'll give them the link to the website. Maybe find a picture for them. We do have some downloadable material that we reference or can share with our clients. But it is really just for education.
Yeah, unless they pay enough, then I'll just do the Inspire myself. I'm just kidding. I will not perform surgery. Okay.
Perfect. This one I think is a nice simple one, but an important one. What body gives a certified sleep coach credential?
This is the BRPT, the Board of Registered Polysomnographic Technologists. So if you go to brpt.org, click on that and it'll be right there on the front page and you can read all about the CCSH. That's the body. And I will give you there is a lot of talk about what the CCSH, part of what we're talking, what the future of the CCSH credential is. So stay tuned on that. I think now is a good time to get in on the ground floor of that as really big conversations are being had about it. In fact, there is a the inaugural conference was last year, a CCSH innovation, and I always forget this.
Catherine's gonna kill us.
I know, Catherine, if you're watching, I'm sorry, but there is a conference dedicated to the CCSH. They had the first one last year. They're gonna have another one this year.
Expanding influence.
Yes, sure. So there's that would be a great opportunity for anyone who's interested in the CCSH to hear a little bit more about it.
Fantastic. Okay, you guys, we have so many great questions here. I'm trying to scroll through. A lot of them are about pricing, which I think probably, I don't know if you want to comment on how you kind of determined your prices. I know that's kind of tricky, or if there's resources available out there for people to look at. I know you covered that a little bit initially on a slide of meeting your patients where they are.
Yeah, you know, using personal trainers as a guide, that's probably a nice place to start. You know, go to your local gym, find out what people are paying for personal training, and have your pricing kind of reflect that. Again, it's going to depend on your.
Yeah, it certainly depends on a lot. I mean, how much time you're putting into it. You know, if you have a protocol, and we've tried out multiple different protocols and steps and ways to do things. If you have your protocol and you're going to meet them every week, if you're doing that for 6 weeks, that's is it 30-minute sessions? Is it 6-hour sessions? I mean, that's a big difference, and that should definitely go into how much you're charging. If it's every other week, or if you do create some content and it's just all self-paced, of course that would be less as well. I mean, actually, if you go to our website, which isn't listed here, but if you go to our website, we do have some of those materials listed for consumers. So you can look at those things to see if that works for you. We try to make that stuff super reasonable and affordable because we're not doing one-on-one coaching at that point, but it still helps to get the awareness and the education out there. You know, we really want to help as many people as possible.
And my one other thing on that is we actually know another sleep coach who actually priced very, very high because she doesn't have a lot of time. So she was trying to actually reduce her volume that way. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I would recommend, I'm going to put on my finance business hat, and I was first figure out what your expenses are going to be and just make sure you can make a profit.
Great advice. And you guys keep saying this, and you can clearly tell in the way you deliver it, right? There's you're doing this because you really believe that there's a way we can get to more patients, get more people in. So it's just fantastic to keep hearing that.
Yeah, a great last note on that is for anyone who is a little bit squeamish about charging the patient directly, another pearl of wisdom we got from, I'll just say Jessica Schmidt, was those patients who are willing to pay out of pocket for this coaching are usually the ones who are going to be motivated to actually stick with it and make the changes.
Right.
So yeah, that's a very good point. Like to actually,
if you do this for $5 to someone, they're not going to be really interested in it. So it does actually help to focus in on people that you want to work with.
That is awesome. Okay, so next question. This is so great, and I'm assuming sometimes they're short, so we have to assume where they're going. So I think there could be two ways that this question could be asked, because they're asking about advice on how a sleep practice should integrate CCSH staff. So I'm assuming there are people within an existing lab that don't do their own sleep coaching business. So this might slice two ways, like how could they work with an organization like you that has kind of their standalone thing? And then if you have advice on people who want to have some internal, maybe CCSH staff, and then maybe we cover both ways that could be asked.
Maybe start internal.
Sure, you want me to do that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Internally for the CCSH, and I'll actually lean a little bit on some of the wisdom from Catherine Hansen on this, is there are ways to use some sleep education codes and make direct revenue for the CCSH working, but sometimes that's a little bit tough. A great way to use the CCSH internally and is actually to use them the same way that you would use a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant. As an RPSGT, one of the things, the two big things we do is we acquire data and we analyze that data. We run sleep studies and we score sleep studies. A CCSH who would be working with a patient, who'd be taking a medical history, who'd be doing some analysis, it's the same job, just different data. And it's actually what the CCSH does. And what you're able to do then is to, again, be there to support your physician. Anyone can take a medical history. Anyone can reconcile medication. Again, make sure that you are really comfortable in that when you do it. But that's what I would advise a CCSH to do within a system. And then the only other thing is remote patient monitoring, which I think I've talked a lot about, but that would be a great other role for a CCSH within practice.
And actually, it's sort of a way to transition to sort of hiring third-party coaches to be in your sleep clinic. I think probably remote patient monitoring would be a good place to start. Obviously, I'm not trying to make a sales pitch here, but just for an example, because obviously I know more about our business. We do work with a CPAP RPM company, and so we provide the coaching for that, but that is for the patients of the provider. So if it's that, or if it's any other sort of working with them, even if it's just sleep hygiene, to take some of that burden off the physicians, to take some of that time away from the very little time that the physicians and their team have with the patient, you'll work with your coach, whatever coaches that you decide to work with. You'll see what their process is, when they're having communication with the patient, what they're sharing with the patient, and talk about how you're going to share that information. So we do use eFax, and we have a secure platform so that the provider can either log in on their own and see the information for the patient, or we can eFax it to them securely. So it's really more about how often you're going to communicate, what they even want to be shared with them, and how you're going to get it to them.
Yeah, whether it's going to be internal or external, we tend to bucket this into kind of 3 buckets, which is patient education, care coordination, and then therapy monitoring. And so my final piece of advice there is, if you're going to work within a practice, find out which one of those meets the biggest need and start there. If the physician doesn't have time to educate, step into that role. If care coordination is all over the place, step into that role. And if there's no remote monitoring, that would be a good place to start.
Fantastic. We have a couple of comments that I'm going to read because they say, thank you, great presentation. And then I have one very specific question. Hold on, let me find it again. That I think is a great question for people who are looking to expand in this and kind of be a leader in sleep coaching. And it's a long one, but it says, hi, I'm a sleep medicine specialist trained specifically in pediatrics and child neuro. My interest is evaluating and treating families as a whole. On that note, I'm looking to develop a sleep team full of coaches. Is it worthwhile for me to certify myself as a CCSH, to train my team with the purpose of finding out and learning what it takes to get trained and certified?
Yes, yes,
That's a great
yes.
question.
I have an opinion on this too.
Yeah, I mean, especially because you are so qualified already, I would imagine that it would be a little bit easier for you to get your CCSH.
Yeah, one of the things I love, the way that I really think about the CCSH is, when you have a lot of these other board certifications, that's a test that you know the knowledge. The CCSH is a credential that says you know how to teach that knowledge, which is really different. It's really the difference between having a PhD in a subject and being a professor teaching that subject. So yes, it sounds like with your background, you have all the knowledge. The CCSH will really give you some tools to help you get the word out and be able to effectively communicate that with the patient.
And I also really love that idea.
Yes.
We do tend to see, actually I was surprised at the poll that those numbers were lesser, but we do tend to see a lot of sleep coaches who focus on babies and early ages and sort of forgetting about the moms and the parents. So I really love the family as a whole.
Yeah, whoever you are, scan the QR code for our Instagram and send a message. We want to talk to you.
Yeah. I thought that was a fantastic question to leave to the end too, because I always think anytime you're trying to work with people and set them up in any area, knowing exactly what they're going to be experiencing, go through is like a game changer.
Yeah. I applaud you. Good luck.
All right. So that is it. We are at our time. I want to thank Teresa and Drew again, and the participants on the webinar have been fantastic. We got so many great questions and so much great participation. And Drew and Teresa, thank you so much. Everybody who took time out of your day to learn about this really cool and exciting topic, we really appreciate that too. So maybe we'll see many of you at the sleep meeting coming up in a couple of weeks. So
thank you so much for inviting us, and thank you all for attending. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.